Rejection is a very hard pill to swallow when it comes to business. Hearing no's from pitches, from clients, whoever it might be for you, it really can put you in this like negative emotional roller coaster. But today's guest is coming on and talking about how to reframe rejection and create potentially a way to gamify it and create a year of no's and how that might positively impact your business. Welcome, you guys, to this week's episode of the Best Damn Coach. I've got a fellow coach on with me, but you are so more than that. So much more in your history that I'm very excited for you to share with our listeners. But I'm so excited to have Emily McDonald join, and we're going to be talking about a really exciting topic, you guys: rejection. So, welcome. I'm so glad you're here.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here. And rejection, it's funny, is something I am so passionate about. So excited to talk about it today.
Yay to that, as we have to learn to be over time. So really how this whole conversation came up, I think I was teaching I think we met like at a networking event, or I was teaching in a community. We got connected, started hanging out and chit-chatting back and forth on social media. I was following yours. I love your story because I feel like you started really far one direction or over in this really cool space now. I mean, both spaces are cool, but you made a post that just really caught my eye. And you said you went through this year or whatever. You're going to tell the story, I think, in just a moment, and you started to gamify rejection. And I love gamifying everything. And I thought this is such a cool concept because it takes this burden or this highly emotional thing, or potentially highly emotional thing, and we get to play with it and add this element of fun, or just like, you're going to share more. But so I invited you on because I want to talk about rejection, because there's a lot of rejection. We get no's from potential leads. We get no's from podcasts. We get no's from our family or the people that we think are supporting us the most. There is a lot of rejection in this path of growing a profitable business. And so I'm pumped to have it with you. So I love that you're passionate about it.
Thank you. Well, also you have to have rejection. Rejection's like, I mean, I'll get into this. But like, rejection is good. It means you're going for things. Like if you don't have rejection, you're probably like sitting on your couch, like not like twiddling your thumbs, So we should be grateful because it means we're on the right path. But anyways, I'll get into that, I'm sure.
Good little teaser. So before we talk rejection, I would love for you to just tell the audience a little bit about how you got into entrepreneurship and where you're at now.
Yeah, so I consider myself a complete born entrepreneur. Like I wanted to start businesses when I was like 5. Like I was like going to start a magazine when I was a teenager. I thought Usher would let me interview him. I like have always like I was reading entrepreneur magazine books on how to start a clothing store when I was like 12. So I always wanted to be an entrepreneur. I went to USC, which is Southern California, in LA, University of Southern California, and they have a great entrepreneurship school. I went there for entrepreneurship. Like I've always wanted to start my own company. I started my first company in 2009. It's called The Stylist LA. It still exists today. It's a women's clothing rental company. It's shifted a lot over the years. Obviously, that was 15 plus years ago. I started it in March of 2009. Scaled it to 7 figures, raised venture capital. There's a lot to that story that I'm glossing over because it is filled with ups, downs, twists, turns, and everything's in between. And in the pandemic, that company really changed because we were really an event-based company. And so we had 2 retail stores that were closed after the pandemic. And I just hit massive burnout. And I had been working so hard and really tying my identity up in this company. So I hired my first coach. She helped me change my life. And she inspired me to want to help other female founders, just have a little bit of an easier path. So now I coach and mentor female founders. And the thing that I am most passionate about is helping them make more money in their businesses, but set them up for long-term success. So not this, like, I'm not teaching people to go viral. I'm not guiding them to have like a one huge hit month.
Amen,
I'm guiding,
sister, amen.
Right, I could talk about this till I'm blue in the face, but like I'm guiding them to build sustainable businesses based on business foundations that will give them a business that they can count on for years to come.
So awesome. I love it. Can you talk more about Style LA? So it was are you shipping people out? Like, tell me more about what that was.
Okay. So it's called The Stylist LA. And I literally started in my living room. pre-Rent the Runway. So let's first start with that. I got laid off from, so I did USC, then I did fashion school for a year. Then I worked for this company. It was actually the woman who founded Reformation. It was her company before Reformation. And it was 2008, 2009. The economy was in a weird place. It was like a high-end women's line. I got laid off. And they were like, we can't pay you, but we need your help closing up shop. We'll pay you in clothes and we'll pay you in commission off of any inventory you can sell. So they had tons of fancy dresses. So I was like, I had written a business plan on this at USC, on this idea. So I was like, you know what? I'm going to start renting dresses out of my living room. And what I did is I saw the need firsthand at the sorority, like in sorority life at USC. So I went back and started doing trunk shows. And so first it was like all in person, like rent from my rolling rack at a trunk show. Then I opened a teeny tiny office in downtown LA that was $350 a month. And then finally we moved to our first showroom in Venice where people could rent in person. And that was all special occasion rental. And we would ship, but people could also come in. Then in 2016, which is my year of no's, which we'll get to in a minute,
Perfect.
I opened a San Francisco store. And that was an incredible year of growth because of the no game. And and then we eventually, pre-pandemic, we launched a subscription rental model, which is now what we do. And it's a very different business now. I have partners who help with that business now. I don't spend as much of my time on it as I used to, but a really cool business. Like we built such a loyal customer base, and it was really, I've learned so much from that journey in so many different ways.
It's so cool. It's so interesting how the first business, because I feel the same way from kind of the health and nutrition brand that I built, is I learned so much of how I wanted to do it again. And it's not this like you have to start over, but you just like you get these opportunities where I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm just, and I think it back to the first year of teaching. I was a high school teacher. And my first hour, I always say my first hour students of my first year of teaching, like I want to go back and apologize to them sometimes. Because I'm like, because when you're a teacher, and I was teaching the same thing, I was teaching biology my first year. So I taught it 6 times before the end of the day, like the exact same lesson. So by 7th hour, dude, I was so much better than first hour. But I think that's part of it, right? Is that we need that. Everybody starts from zero, from scratch, from not knowing anything. Even though you came out of business school, I'm sure like most academic experiences, like it teaches you something, but nothing like the real world.
No, and it's something I also talk a lot about is how much we need the journey. We need the journey, right? There's a reason why you don't come out the gates being $1 million founder. Like it makes you who you're supposed to be. I think the journey in entrepreneurship is one of the biggest personal growth journeys. And I truly feel blessed for every part of it. Even the parts that were bad and really hard and the anxiety I had and all this stuff, the burnout, because it got me to where I am today. And so that's something I always tell people. I'm like, you need that like gap of where you are and where you want to be, because you're not ready for the $1 million business on day one.
No,
you're not the founder. You're going to be there. So it's a journey for sure. And I agree with you. I'm like, can I apologize to all my old employees? Like, sorry, I was such a psycho. I mean, I wasn't, I shouldn't say that, but like, sorry, I just was so stressed. Like now I'm like, I mean, granted I had kids and now I'm like, okay, the world, there's bigger fish to fry, but I just was so stressed back then.
Well, and that's so true. Like, I don't know business without being a parent because my kids were 4 and 6 when I started business. And so I would imagine the transition from running a business as not being a parent to parenting, is a little bit bigger. But I also like to remind my audience, this is also important in mentorship where you consider who's supporting you. Because if you're seeking mentorship from someone that isn't a parent and you are a parent, it's not that they can't teach you a boatload. It's just that our priorities are going to be different. I use this example, like my co-coach in my community that does our sales coaching, Jillian Murphy. I don't know if you know Jillian.
Oh, I love Jillian.
She comes in one time a month and teaches sales, but she doesn't have kids at home. She's, dating, and I'm married with 2 children at home. And so the capacity for which I have to work in my business looks different. That doesn't mean we can't hit the same goals. It just means that the way we do it's probably going to look a lot different in this season. And so it's important to understand when you seek mentorship, their priorities too, and that somebody who's never had children or never desires to have children is just going to lead business differently than a mom would. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's just what is, to consider.
Yeah, definitely. And like age was a part of it too, right? Like I started that company when I was 24, 23. And
That's amazing.
and I had
Yeah.
so much to give. And it was my first, it's your first time. I was like, oh my gosh, like I can work all the time. Like I'll never burn out. And now I'm
Yes.
like,
Yes.
it's like parenting and perspective and time and age. And now I'm like, I'm not working till midnight. Like
No
I'm going to
way.
bed at
Yeah.
9 p.m. and like going to read a book. It's just
Yeah.
a
Yeah. I
different
love that.
world.
I'm so glad that you've found that on your journey as well. And so I would love to talk about the post because in that
Yeah.
post, and I'm probably going to grab that post and link it here in the show notes so they can just go back and take it in as well. But you talked about referencing whatever year it was, 2016, 18, which became this year of no's for you. And you decided to gamify rejection. So can you just like tee that up? Why did
Yep.
you decide to do that? Like, why were you like, I need all the no's? Like, how help us wrap your brain or our brains
Yeah.
around where your brain was.
So it was 2016 and I'd been building the Stylist LA. Granted, let me say this. I did it part-time for the first like 4 years. So I had other part-time jobs. So I can't remember exactly what year. I think it was 2014 when I really was like, okay, I'm going all in on this. And I was trying a lot of different things, but I felt like I was like halfway there and then was so scared of what people were going to think or like so scared of getting the no. And in 2016, I don't know what it was. It was like a switch flipped. Sorry, switch flipped.
Either
And
way, it actually works either way.
I was like, I'm just over it. Like I'm over not going all the way. And it's actually funny because I feel like I'm in a similar phase of this right now. I can feel this again. So I was just like, you know what? I'm gonna go for it. I'm just gonna go for it. Anything that scares me, I'm gonna lean into it. So I gamify everything. Like it just makes things more fun to me. So I was like, you know what? I'm gonna try and get 20. I can't remember now if it was 20 a week or 20 a month. The number doesn't exactly matter. Um, but basically I was like, I'm going to try and get as many people to say no to me as humanly possible. And I started with the number 20. I was like, I want to get 20 people to say no. But then it just snowballed because I'm very ambitious where I was like, I just want all the no's. So what that meant was I was like, let me think outside the box. And if something scares me, that means I need to run towards it. Like pretty much like if I'm scared of getting rejected, I'm just going to run towards it. And the biggest thing I started in the spring of 2016. And one of the biggest things was we were growing on Instagram. And that's where we were getting a lot of clients. And Instagram was so big then. And so was the show The Bachelor. And I had this idea to reach out to the final four girls. It was Ben Higgins' season, which is funny because I consider that to be like the height of The Bachelor. I don't know if you
I'm
watched it.
never a Bachelor watcher, so I'm so sorry to
That's
admit that.
okay.
But I know the show. I've probably caught a few episodes, but I've never
Yeah,
like gotten into the whole like
totally. I mean,
fluff
I
around
don't
it.
watch it anymore, but like when I tell you, and this is what I tell people, the Bachelor customer base was the Stylist LA customer base. Like that's why this was so perfect. It was so aligned, which is what I tell people like where are your people hanging out? My people were having like sorority watch parties for The Bachelor, watching it every Monday. They were obsessed with it. So what I decided to do, so this is like one of the things I was doing, and I can tell you all the things I did on the route to 20 no's, was I was like, you know what, I'm gonna reach out to these four girls. If they don't respond, it doesn't matter. And this was a little bit different. Like now it's like people DM people all the time. Like this was people and influencers there weren't influencers. And these girls weren't tagging people on Instagram. I DM'd the final four girls and I was like, look, we have a clothing store in Venice in LA. We have tons of outfits. You need outfits for like press events, for final events, like whatever it is. I don't know who wins. Reach out to me and let me know if you're interested. And we actually ended up dressing three of them. But the most interesting one was Lauren Bushnell, who now is she's married to a musician and lives in Nashville. She's incredible. But she won that season and she was like, I live right around the corner and I need outfits for everything because they didn't give them stylists. So she was like,
Wow.
can I come in? And we were like, yeah, we didn't know she'd won. She was like, can I come in? And then I think we kind of like figured out she'd won because she was like, I need outfits for a lot of events. So we literally packed her garment bags and we were like, okay, go. And we're like, all you have to do is tag us on Instagram. And it was such a perfect thing because she needed us and we needed her. And it was the
So cool.
coolest thing ever because she won. And that night after she won, she went live on Jimmy Kimmel. She was in her dress. The next morning, she was on GMA. She was in her dress. Then she went on, I can't even remember. It was like Kelly and Michael, like whatever, Kelly and Ryan, maybe at the
Whoever,
time.
yeah.
But like event after event after event. And this was when like the fanfare was insane. Like people were so obsessed. And it was like absolute madness. So that was the first thing. Then that led to so many things we did with Lauren. We did photo shoots with her. We The Bachelor filmed at our showroom. Like, we then ended up dressing the Bachelor girls for a long time. So that was a huge one. Another one was like, I then started fundraising. So I started raising money. And and I did another post on this. I raised over $1 million in venture capital. I had like over 130 investors say no to me.
That's so
So,
good to hear
which
that,
also I
like,
have a list literally of every single one that I met with and that said
that's
no to
so
me.
good to hear.
So those are just a few examples. Then in the fall of 2016, I did a crowdfunding campaign on Indiegogo at the time, which is funny, to open our San Francisco showroom. So I was asking for so many things and getting so many no's, so many no responses, so many like people probably like laughing at me behind the scenes. But I was like, look, I promised myself I was going for no's. So by gamifying it, like it became really cool because I stopped caring about the no's. It wasn't about the no's. It was actually like a joy to get them because I was like, oh, this is my path. This is what I'm supposed to be doing. I'm supposed to be getting those no's.
Oh my gosh. There's so many things to unpack here. First off, kudos to you for thinking out of the box because that's the thing that I think, especially in the coaching world, a lot of coaches are looking around and saying, how's everybody else doing it? Yeah, I should do it like that. Instead of saying like, how's everybody else doing? No, I should do it a different way. Right. And I think that's what I hear is like, I'm gonna just try this thing and whatever happens, happens. Um, my question for you is first, I want to hit on like the no responses because I I almost find that the no responses because things like DMing people and sending, private messages, email campaigns are way more, obviously popular and a strategy used now. Um, we probably get a lot more no responses and we can presume
Yep.
they're no's or whatever. I find that a lot of my people struggle more with the no response than the actual no, right? Because it's like this open loop and there's not a closed loop. So how do you rummage through the minds? Like, what's your mindset about a no response? Probably
Okay.
then versus now might be different, but what do you think about that?
Totally. I actually talk about this a lot because I think there's also, I don't know if your coaches see this, but I see this with a lot of my clients. There's also this world we're in where a lot of people will be like, I want to work with you. And you'll send them the information and then they don't respond, right? Like there's a lot of that. And I think the no response is so much more common now than it was in 2016. In every aspect, you DM someone you want to work with, you are working with potential clients, like potential partnerships. There's just so many more no responses. Here's the thing. You have to find a balance. You have to straddle the line between being pushy and annoying. And also you absolutely must follow up. Okay. So that's the thing. If you are not following up on things, you are missing out. When I was running the Stylist LA full steam, I was like, if people didn't follow up with me, I like was never replying because there was just so much happening. So if somebody was trying to sell me something or trying to get a new brand in the showroom, I was like, if they're not following up, it was like, it didn't even come on my radar. So that's the first thing. But I think you have to know the venue. Are you cold DMing someone that you want to see your services? Like, how can you be of service to those type of people? Right. So like instead of, and that's why I say this scenario is important. Like if it's like you're cold DMing potential clients, like I don't, and I make the bulk of my money on Instagram and I have under 2,000 followers, right? So like this is a big thing for me. I talk about this a lot. Like how those people, like, can you offer them a freebie? Are you like, hey, I saw your story and you're struggling with X. Here's a podcast I recorded with like that, that topic, right? Like, how can you make your follow up like a caring response to people, right? Like, or a caring, not response because they didn't reply, but like a caring message to people. You know what I mean? Like, and I think that's one of the things I learned about the no's is like, you're not just doing it blindly. Like, you're not, plugging in a robot to your Gmail and emailing 1,000 people to get 1,000 no's. Like, what it is finding things that are aligned and make sense for you and like treating like it's like going for things that scare you, but it's like respecting the people on the other side, if that makes sense. So I would say no responses. They're really tough. But I would say, what's the venue? Make sure you follow up in whatever you're doing. But like, how can you follow up in a way that is like impactful, helpful, like makes the people stop in their tracks and actually read what you're writing?
Yeah. I want to like keep going down this rabbit hole because I had two things happen to me last week that I was really like wanting to get like look at me, I'm even adjusting myself in my chair right now. I had a person reach out of nowhere and say, hey, I love your content. We had a mutual connection. Was just wondering, like, I'd love the chance to connect and chat with you and just see how we might be able to support each other. And I'm always down for those conversations if I have the capacity. And this particular person I just honored, I was like, look, this was back in June. I was like, I'm traveling the rest of June. Here's a link to my schedule. I'd love if you would book anytime after the 4th. So we get on a call, and this person's probably a year and a half into business, and we sit down and like, hey, chit chat. And she's like, okay, this conversation can go one of 3 ways. I have a podcast. You could be on it. I could come into your community and I could teach my XYZ thing, and then I can be on your podcast. And I was turned off because she broke immediate rapport with me. And you said something in what you just said that I just really want to like hit home on this whole thing, is that the intention of your heart and why you're going in to pitch that particular thing or offer that service or something, it has to be rooted in like having a servant's heart and being able to lead that person or that person's community. And so I've been waffling on this, like, I think I need to loom this person back and like let them know. And so immediately I was like, hey, I'm happy to be on your podcast, but I don't operate like that. We've just met. And one, we don't have guest coaches in our community. We really hold this space sacred. I'm just not adding fluffy people in to like make up space. And 2, we reserve authentic communications that come from people that I meet on the podcast. We have 12 solo episodes a year. And like, essentially you're welcome to fill out the application, but like, this isn't, and so I share that story because intention matters, and service first above self will always be the fruits of productive labor when and if you have a follow-up strategy that's constant and you're coming from that like heart-centered service space.
I am so glad this came up, because this is why I was so successful at the Stylist LA, by the way, because my deepest passion is connecting with people. Okay. This is also why I make money from Instagram. I literally tell people I have a bunch of things I'm teaching right now on how to make money on Instagram. I'm like, treat every follower like they're the human that they are. Like, why we've gotten in this world where like the internet has made us think things are so transactional, and what will make you more successful in business is like, how do you serve people? Let's even go back to this bachelor example, right? Like, I had a proposition for these girls where I was like, I will help you, you will help me. It was so mutually beneficial. And that's why like I became super close with them. Like, I went on trips with these girls. We hosted influencer events for them. Like, they became incredible people in my life, and we became friends. And so like, that's what it's a piece of the no puzzle that people forget, right? Like, you are not going into Chat GPT and saying, give me 1,000 people to pitch, and now I'm going to put a bot in my Gmail to send it to them. It's like, wouldn't you rather have a pitch, or like someone pitching to be on your podcast who's listened to it, who's talking about it, who's like, here's what I could offer you. Like, lead from a place. And that's what I say with cold DMing, right? Like, lead from a place where you're giving to people, and you will be so much more successful. And I know that's not really the no topic, but it's such a like important piece of the puzzle. Also,
no, I think it's huge.
Let me note, I just realized in this video, I'm drinking from a red Solo cup. I need everyone to know it's because I'm on vacation and this is water.
And if it wasn't, we don't care here.
So. I just think it's funny because usually I have like my big water bottle, and we're on vacation right now. So I'm like, oh, I'm literally drinking ice water out of a red Solo cup. It looks like I'm drinking a beer.
I love it. So funny. Well, I'm thinking in the context of coaches, when we're talking about no's, I want to be clear. We're not talking about like go cold DM all the people that follow you. When we're talking about no's, it can be simply from like, a lot of our coaches are working on a pitch to be on podcasts.
That's
or
it.
I do live collaborations. It could be a sales call that we're getting a no. It could be funding that you're looking for. It could be teaching in a guest community. It could be speaking on a stage. Like, there's so many no's that potentially could come up from the work that we do. And I think that, when we think about our no strategy, it's helpful though to, as you said, gamify and hit the number. And when I find that I get away from having any outcome goal specifically and I focus on the action, then for me, it's like mentally freeing. So what I mean by that is like, I feel like I've said like a lot. I'm so sorry about that today.
I don't even notice.
if I'm setting, I always know because I'm trying to get it out of my podcasting
Mhm.
vocabulary. And so when I listen to my replays, I'm like, dang it, that's like 7 likes. But anyways, if I'm setting a goal, then I would rather track how many pitches I make
Yep.
than the yeses that I get. Or you could totally track the no's. One of my coaching certifications, way back used to have this 100 no's for your first clients, because inevitably if you get
Mhm.
100 no's, you're
You're
probably
going to get
getting
some yeses.
yeses. And then you get some data in there and you're like, for every 100 no's, I get 25 yeses. I'm like, you have a 25% conversion. Boom. Like that teaches us so much through that process.
Well, another thing I was going to say that came to mind when you were just speaking about this is like what it really is it's going for the things that scare you. So we're saying don't cold DM 100 people. But if you're like, look, my goal, and I tell everyone, I'm like, what is your bigger goal here? What are you trying to achieve? Okay, if it is you want to be on podcasts, like let's gamify that. And you're right, because the number of podcasts you pitch is what you control. The number you get, the number of yeses you get, you don't control. But so let's make a number. So you're like, okay, and I talk about this so much with clients. Like, what's your strategy? Okay, I'm going to pitch 10 podcasts a week. And like, then I'm going to see how many say no or say yes over the course of a month, right? It's like breaking that down into a bit of a game so that instead of being like, man, I'm so bummed so and so said no to me, I'm not going to pitch any this week. You're like, wait, I got to get my 10. And that's what happened with the no's is I was like, I don't really care that so and so said no to me because I've got to hit my 20 no's.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's so good. So it's this gap really of overcoming the fear. And so I'm curious, what kind of strategy or what would you say to somebody that is really stuck on the no having meaning? Like, I think the reason we struggle with rejection to begin with is that we make it mean we're not good enough. We make it mean we don't have enough experience. We make it mean what we're talking about isn't valuable. So I'm curious, how did you or how would you suggest like working around that idea to be able to even take the action for the first no?
Well, my question first would be, what are you so scared of? What is it about the no that's scaring you? Are you like embarrassed? Okay, so and I would like pull the thread. So if I was coaching a client, I'd be, okay, what are you so nervous about? Right? Like, what are you so scared of? If it's you're embarrassed, well, like, let's talk about that. Who's seeing that you're getting rejected? Like, what are you embarrassed about? Like, you feel dumb. Okay, why do you feel dumb? You know, whatever it is. Are you scared that someone, like, you feel like someone's laughing at you? Okay, first of all, that's never usually the case. And also, like, what can we do to make you feel more confident in what you're doing? So then I have some strategies. Oh my gosh. So, like, I do Soul Cycle. I'm obsessed with Soul Cycle. It is the thing I do every Sunday morning
Tell
that,
everybody what Soul Cycle
oh,
is, just
sorry.
in
So
case they don't know.
Soul Cycle is like a group cycling class, and they do really fun music and they have really fun teachers. And I've done it in every city I've lived in. I do it every Sunday morning. And I'm like, this is where I remember I'm a badass. So if the issue is you need to hype yourself up, like there are ways to do that. Like I have clients write down 100 reasons why they're good at their job, because that's really hard to do. And usually they get stuck a few different times. I have people build up hype books, which are like, you know, testimonials or like why people love them. And some people will say, well, I'm brand new. I don't have things to add to the hype book. Well, there's a reason why people love you. Like, why do your siblings love you? Why do your friends love you? Why do peers look up to you? Like every single person, and this is a bit of a tangent, but every single person on this planet has something to offer that no one else has. And you've got to tap into that to gain the confidence to not be so scared of rejection. And the second piece of this that's super important is it gets easier. The more you get rejected, the more it rolls off your back, which is why gamifying it is so, so important. Because if you gamify it, then you start getting the no's and you're like, you just stop caring as much, right? So it's a little bit like baptism by fire. Like you just kind of like now, like I don't care about no's at all because I've gotten so many over my entrepreneurial journey. I'm like, whatever.
Yeah,
Um,
totally.
and some hurt more than others, right? Because there's some things you want more, but
Well, and I've
it's part of
learned,
it.
yeah, I've learned too, another helpful thing that's worked well for me when I was really starting to work on visibility a few years ago is I would totally push it, right? I felt the resistance. I knew it was scary. I was feeling that like possibility of rejection. I was making it mean I wasn't good enough yet. I hadn't quote unquote made it. And so I literally was like, Amanda, you got to stop being your own bottleneck. And
Yep.
so a girlfriend and I would meet every Monday on Zoom in silence. I would say, it literally would take me an hour probably in the beginning to pitch to one podcast. And I would sit there and I would say, okay, these are the two podcasts I'm going to pitch at today. And I would literally shake sometimes of just like, I'm so afraid to hit go, like to hit send or whatever the case was. And then it was like, I hit send. It was like, oh yeah, like it makes me think of that meme. And it's like the two worlds. It's a picture of the world. And it's like the world before you hit send on the podcast pitch. And then the second picture is like the same picture, but it's like the world after. Like actually nothing really changed.
Oh,
Like nothing in my life is impacted. Nothing has
totally.
happened. And so something that was powerful for me, like I love your idea of like, get your hype squad going, which is yourself, play the music, do whatever. But I love having accountability in those beginning
Hmm.
times when you're really resisting it and you can be with somebody in person or on Zoom in silence and be like, I just need you to hold this space. So like make me do the thing.
Also, two things I want to say is one is like I almost puked plenty of times going into pitch investors. Just FYI. Like that's like the
I'm
scariest
sure.
thing I've ever done.
I
Like,
did puke doing Facebook Lives originally.
oh my gosh, I love that. I don't love that you puked, but I like that. I think that's a good story. The other
Yep.
thing you have to remind yourself is part of being an incredible founder is learning the skill to push through when things are hard for you. That is like huge. And we're like, it's just, and I consider coaches founders, by the way, anyone that is running their own business, which to me, like, is literally anyone who runs their own business. And you have to be able to push through and you have to be able to know when to push and when to be kind to yourself. Right. And so, like, that's something that you just learn over time,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
you have to learn when to push. Like, you have to learn when you're like, I'm my own bottleneck. Like, I'm standing my own way, which is when I got over my own SHIT and was like, I'm going to do this 20 No's project. So I was like, I'm sick of holding myself back.
Yeah.
And
So
so
good.
that's what's important about this, right? Is like you found a way to push through. You got an accountability person, like whatever it is that you need. If it's the accountability person, if it's like hiring a mentor, a coach, or getting an accountability
Breath
coach,
work,
or
tapping. I
what
don't care what it is.
literally, I
Find
used
your
to
thing.
listen. This is an embarrassing admission, but I think it's so good. I used to listen to Flow Riders, Club Can't Handle Me Right Now before I would pitch because it would
Okay,
just
well,
got me
I'm
hyped.
Whitney Houston. I want to dance with somebody.
Yes.
So
Like
find your thing.
whatever, you gotta find it. And it's really hard. Find people who get it, other people that are doing the same thing. You're right. The accountability, like community, like lean into that.
It's so good. Okay, this is like kind of blowing my mind, just the whole idea of reinventing the no. And so for those of you listening, I would just encourage you to take exactly as Emily said, like gamify it. Whatever
Mm-hmm.
the thing is you're working on, if it's asking 20 people to your freebie and getting or 20 no, like working to get 20 no's into your freebie or podcast pitches, IG lives, possible clients. I don't care what it is, but this has to speak to all of us, no matter what level of business. In order to get to the next level, it's going to require no's because, as she said in the beginning, it presupposes growth. It presupposes you're headed in the right direction. And sadly, if you're not getting no's, then you're probably sitting on the
Yeah.
sidelines. And the greatest resource you're wasting, in my opinion, is time by not taking action and getting the no. So, can you share where we can learn more from you? Tell us about your socials, all the things.
I love hanging out on Instagram. So if you can find me on Instagram. My handle is Founder Emily. I love having conversations in the DMs. I would absolutely love if people reached out to me there. That is where I post the majority of my free content. I host a lot of free workshops, challenges, and things like that. And all of that is you can find on my Instagram. And
Amazing.
then I have a
I,
freebie for
oh, yeah.
you that will link in the show notes. A freebie that is actually incredible. I made it as a paid product. And then I was like, you know what? I'm just going to give this away. It's called the Money Flows Workbook. And it's what I have found is the first step, the first thing people should do before when they're wanting to make more money in their business. It is the first step.
I love it. And we will link all of the things that she just mentioned inside the show notes. I'm just so grateful we finally got to connect, and I'm grateful that you took the time on your vacay to
Of course.
record with us. And I know my
It was
audience.
a nice little break. It's kind of nice to pop into work for an hour here and there. So
Yes, yes.
I
And then
appreciate you.
your kiddos are off enjoying their things, and you have a mom moment to collect.
Yes, my water and my
And you're enjoying your solo cup of water.
Thank you so much for having me. Such a fun
It's been a
conversation.
pleasure.
And I hope people leave this just inspired to go get some notes.
Yeah, heck yes. Heck yes to the nose. You guys, I hope you enjoyed the conversation with Emily, and I will see you next week, same time, same place. And until then, go coach them up.